welcome to Trusty Chords, the podcast which aims to celebrate music and those that create it. I'm going to be completely transparent right from the start and tell you that I am entirely biased when it comes to today's artist. This week, I am talking about Echo Social Club, a Melbourne rock duo who I have been completely enraptured by since I first saw them live in early 2023. Featuring former Pseudo Hive and the Humdrums member Jake Bicchieri on guitar and vocals, and former Heavy Amber member Neve Tullberg on drums and occasional vocals, the pair are a ferocious mix of blistering rock that have left me speechless on numerous occasions. I first met Jake when he was in Pseudo, and full transparency, he contacted me when Echo Social Club first came together, telling me about his new band. I wasn't sure what to expect, but when I saw them play their second show last year, their live show blew me to the back of the wall. Since then, I have made it my mission to catch them live as often as I can, while telling everyone in earshot about how good they are. On paper, they're an unassuming duo, but when they hit the live stage, they've got more energy than a service station amphetamine, and they're thrice as potent. Honestly, I can't even begin to tell you how immense their live show is. Put it this way, the White Stripes' Jack White is playing Melbourne this December, and if Echo Social Club were the opener, Jack himself would be complaining about the order of the bands. But along the way, Echo Social Club have found time from their busy live schedule to hit the studio with Michael Badger and record an amazing EP. Titled White Heat, White Noise, it's a 5-track collection of songs that have been refined over the past couple of years through their live sets. To celebrate, the pair are marking its release with not only a hometown launch show, but a run of shows throughout Adelaide, Sydney, Geelong, and an additional hometown show to cap it off. I know I'm supposed to remain somewhat impartial, but I truly think you should go ensure you see them at these shows. As you might assume, Jake and Neve were my guests this week for the podcast. Sadly, we did have some customary audio issues, but they're completely my fault, namely because Jake actually lent me a mic a few months ago and I forgot to give it back to him, meaning the audio from their end has some faults. Regardless, I strongly urge you to check out Echo Social Club's White Heat, White Noise, and once you're done giving that a spin, buy some tickets to their tour, have a listen to our chat, and I'll see you at the end of the episode for some general housekeeping. Jake Bicchieri and Neve Tullberg, thank you very much for joining this episode of Trusty Chords.
Thank you for having us, mate.
So I'm going to assume that most folks who would be listening to this podcast, and God knows there's absolutely thousands of them, they might not know your names. So can you guys give me a quick few words on who you are and why we're chatting?
So I'm Jake Bicchieri, and I play guitar and I sing in Echo Social Club.
I'm Neve Tullberg. I play drums in Echo Social Club.
Nice and simple. I like it. So ahead of our chat, I was given your media kit. And, not that I particularly needed it, but right on the front, there's a quote from someone in the media who says, "I saw them a total of 12 times this year. I was truly amazed each time." Now, this isn't Media Watch, but can you guys reveal your sources and tell me who said that?
Well, look, I don't like to obviously tattletale on all my sources, but I think it was a guy named Tyler Jenke.
That sounds about right, actually, because I am willing to tell you that, over the years, I've seen, according to my records, 977 different artists live, and I truly believe that you guys are one of the best ones I've seen.
So, be, man.
I guess what I'm trying to say here is that this podcast is pretty much going to be me pumping your tires. Before I get into things on a more specific level, I should, I guess, go back in time a little bit with you guys and ask you both, what is your earliest memories of when music first resonated with you?
That's a really good question.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, hard reading questions. I know.
Well, my dad plays guitar, so I've always grown up around music, had instruments in the house. Since birth, it's just been around it.
Well, I think the same. My dad's and his dad as well were musicians. Well, my dad's still a musician, I suppose. He doesn't play as much anymore, but and I remember distinctly me seeing my grandfather, his dad's guitar, and him showing me that. I think that was one of the first times that I kind of actually really, I think, where I actually conceptualized the fact that I was into music for some reason. I don't know if I even kind of remember hearing him play it or thinking about what the guitar sounded like, but I remember that being a very visceral kind of experience, just looking at it going like, wow, that's got a lot of history. I think that's what it is.
So were you guys both the type to actually hear music and sort of say, this is something I want to be involved in? I want to play music? Like, did it have that connection with you guys when you first, I guess, heard music?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, it was always a big part of my everyday life, just even in the car, driving, listening to music with my dad. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, same. I would say the exact same thing. I don't know if it was one thing that I wanted to get into. I just remember, or wanting to play it or anything like that. I just remember just being really kind of into it. I remember my dad being into it, and I think that's why I kind of got into it. Him kind of explaining to me who these people were and what they were doing with the guitar and or whatever instrument they were playing. And yeah, I would say so.
So, with any particular artists, I guess you guys sort of remember from those formative years? I mean, I think Neve, I can see you're wearing a Kiss shirt.
Yeah.
That usually feels like the sort of band that you see, over the classic rock radio or something that most people listen to growing up.
Yeah, Kiss was definitely a big one. So was Van Halen. My dad loves Van Halen, so it was always pumping throughout the house.
This is going to be boring. Same. Kiss was one of those ones for sure. I think the theatrics of Kiss was one thing that was kind of really alluring. All the makeup and all that kind of stuff, and same thing with Van Halen. I remember, and also Rush. I remember Rush being one of those things that my dad showed me for the first time. I was kind of blown away. It was fun. I think he put it on as kind of like a lullaby, which is really weird. But like YYZ to put me to sleep. But it was those three bands for sure. Even the Eagles as well.
Easy.
Yeah, easy talk.
I was actually going to say, I'm actually really glad you mentioned YYZ, because the second you mentioned Rush, I was just thinking about how I think I was in 12th grade and it was 11th grade. I didn't study music in 12th grade, but we had like music, like assignment recital sort of things. And I decided, no, I'm not going to do what my music teacher taught me. I'm going to try and play YYZ by Rush. And somehow I was the only person who got an A in the class. But to this day, I still remember how to play it. And just as you're saying that, I'm just sort of like, that's not really a lullaby.
Yeah, no, it's not.
So
how's the call on you to just drop that?
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, it was when like Guitar Hero was a big thing, and that was one of the songs in Guitar Hero. Yeah. And I think only one person was like, "Is that from Guitar Hero?" And I'm like, "Oh, is it?" I just knew it ahead of time, trying to act like I was really cool. But I guess that also sort of leads into the next question I had, which is, how did you both, I mean, obviously, I say both, but this is obviously separately. How did you both start your, journeys with music and actually playing music?
I remember there's kind of like a few different levels to it. I remember when I first sung in front of people as a kid. Like I was really, really young. I mean, I barely remember it, but I've had the stories told to me about seeing Celine Dion in a pub in my pop's pub in Hawthorne, singing "My Heart Will Go On," really just going for it. And then from there, I remember singing in front of my classmates in school, singing Grace Kelly by Mika. Unreal album as well, Life in Cartoon Motion. I remember that, and then I think it just kind of snowballed slowly into like getting into guitar rather than singing as well, and then playing in my first kind of school band, and then entering in Battle of the Bands when I was 15, and then actually trying to write music and trying to structure songs and trying to write lyrics. And I mean, some of them were absolutely abhorrent. I listened to a few of them actually a couple of weeks ago. It's just abysmal. But I suppose it's one of those kind of snowball things where it's multi-leveled, singing in front of people, like doing karaoke kind of stuff, and then singing in front of classmates and actually picking up guitar and learning how to play and sing at the same time, and then playing with your mates in school, and then trying to actually come up with, I suppose, a project that has a clear vision, I suppose, and a clear kind of through line of kind of what you want to put out there, I suppose.
But I have to say as well, Celine Dion and Mika are some pretty bold, bold choices for public performances.
Yeah,
nothing but the high notes with you.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a shame that probably the years of smoking's taken the edge off that octave, but that's all right.
We could. I'm sure we can, resurrect a bit of Grace Kelly for the EP launch. But Neve, what about yourself? How did you sort of really get into the performing and playing?
So I started piano lessons when I was pretty young, and doing like recitals and stuff. I didn't do many. I did like one or two maybe. And then from there, I decided I wanted to play guitar. So then I got my pink little Hello Kitty guitar, and I was learning Running with the Devil on that. And then I decided at 17 that I wanted to play drums.
You're mentioning sort of bands and everything before, Jake. So obviously, actually, I'm going to start with you, Neve. So apart from Echo Social Club, you've been in Heavy Amber, correct?
Yeah.
Were there any other bands that you'd been in along the way?
Yeah, I was in a band when I was 17. And then besides that, just school bands and stuff. Yeah.
I guess, Jake, on your side of things, I think you've been a little bit more, I guess, public with the bands you've been in. So I'm aware of bands like the Humdrums and Pseudo Hive, which is how we first crossed paths. But I'm going to assume, apart from school bands, I might be missing something there. Was there any other bands at all?
No. Besides my school, they were the only ones actually. Yeah. So
I'm actually amazed that that's all it is, because like to me, you strike me as the sort of person who would sort of be in every band you could possibly imagine, like going to gigs and elbowing your way up on stage or something.
Oh, that's nice. No, I think that's nice. Yeah, probably the contrary. Actually, I was always a bit more kind of. It took me a long time. I played by myself, kind of like as a bit more of a singer-songwriter type situation for a few years before Humdrums, and kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do and kind of, I suppose, find. Find my voice sounds a bit pretentious, but I mean, it's cliche, but I think that probably is the truth behind it. But I was always a bit kind of a bit more kind of reserved about what I wanted. It took a lot to put the Humdrums together and then kind of actually do that. And I suppose Humdrums in a lot of ways was proto Echo Social Club in the fact that it was a two-piece and it was kind of like very much trying to figure out what I was going to do on the guitar and all that kind of stuff. And then moving to Pseudo, obviously being a very quite an established band in the local scene, and I mean amazing musicians, like absolutely incredible musicians that I learned a lot from. It feels like a lot, but it's actually not really when you think about it. I mean, we've actually probably been in equal amount of time. I mean, you started younger than me. Yeah, like a lot younger. You were in how old were you in Jungle? Like 16, 17? Yeah, it's wild. So yeah.
When you were in Pseudo, Jake, I'm trying to remember. Were you a guitarist in that one, or were you bassist?
No, I played bass in Pseudo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously you're a very, diverse musician and everything. Guitar or bass, how do they sort of, like for you, how did they sort of both present themselves? Were they sort of like, one or the other? Or did you find yourself on guitar first or bass first? Or was it just that you're able to sort of attack both with the same sort of ferocity?
I started on bass because my dad was a majority a bassist for the bands that he played in. Then I shifted to guitar pretty quickly. I realized that I wanted to be a guitarist. And then after I started and played in Humdrums, and when that kind of finished up, I got the tap on the shoulder from Sam and Chris from Pseudo to play bass with them. And the reason being is that they thought that obviously I was kind of a bit more attuned into locking in with a drummer. Pretty like that was pretty much all I had to lock in with Humdrum. So I suppose it was kind of like a, hey, can you do it? Yeah, I'd love to try and do it. And then I pretty much had to learn bass. I mean, like it's easy to play root note bass, but I would say bass is, my experience, bass is a million times harder than playing guitar for sure. Like, and playing it well. Not saying that I did, but playing it well and writing really, really good bass lines is so tricky. So it was a really, really good learning experience. That's for sure. Yeah.
So then I guess on that topic of, locking in with just a drummer, it was, I think, 2022, you messaged me on Instagram and told me you got a new band that you're working on. So obviously the groundwork had been laid by that point, but how did Echo Social Club come about? How did you two say, going to make a band?
You can take this one.
So it probably started when Heavy Amber supported Pseudo. We'd heard a lot of really, really good things about Heavy Amber and what Neve and Sienna and Cass were doing, like together as that three-piece, the original lineup. And we pretty much asked them blind if they wanted to support us at one of our shows. It wasn't a single launch, was it? It was just a headlining gig, or am I just making things up?
No, it was the one at Stay Gold.
Yeah, it was the Stay Gold with Badge.
Yeah.
And then and we kind of wanted to do a bit of I suppose, a bit of reconnaissance. Not really. I mean, we just wanted to go see them because we heard so many good things about them. We'd already asked them to support us, and we went and saw one of the residencies that you did, one of your shows at the Toe in the front bar. It's just one of those wild experiences. Probably one of my favourite local gigs that I've ever seen in my life. I remember all of us just kind of look at each other and go, like, we're seeing something very special here. And I kind of was watching Neve play drums, and I was like, fuck, man, she's a really good drummer. I turned to Chris, and I'm like, man, I'm definitely stealing her for something one day for sure. And I don't know, it's kind of like after Pseudo was starting to wrap up and every other one of the other guys kind of had their own projects, and, we were starting to put the finishing touches on the last EP that we put out. I tried to write a bunch of things. I wanted to kind of put together a band that was going to be a bit more kind of I was writing kind of like something a bit more kind of Baroque stuff, I suppose, maybe like something like maybe, I suppose, singer-songwriter in a lot of ways, and then it just kept on. Every time I'd try and write something, it would loop back into the kind of old tried and true formula of me writing with just a two-piece in mind. And as I was kind of formulating a bunch of those riffs and songs, I just kind of went, I think I want to do this again. And yeah, like the first person that I thought I was Neve, and I worked up a bit of courage and I messaged her and started jam. Did I get that right?
Yeah, you did.
Good law drop. That's canon, baby.
And then I guess Neve, from your point of view, when Jake said, "Hey, do you want to sort of drum in this project that I'm making?" What was your sort of reaction? Were you thinking, you know what, you know your way around a six string? Maybe there could be something that works here.
Yeah. So I had just left Heavy Amber, and then Jake messaged me. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. Like I had a few demos and stuff that I was thinking, oh, maybe I'd start my own band, like playing guitar for a change. And then Jake messaged me, and I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll do this. And, because I like Jake, it was good to hang around with. And
yeah. No, thanks.
Yeah, so then we had that jam, and then right after the jam, you were like, do you want to go get a drink? Like, okay. And then from there, it was like, it's good.
Yeah, it's you have to, you have to get along. I mean, you can sound, you can play great or whatever, but if you can't, I can't not get along with something. I can't be hanging out with them pretty much all the time. I suppose that's kind of like the bare bones of it all, really. I mean, you have to sit in the car and sit in a room and load in and load out so many times. So it was good for you. I was kind of always thought you just didn't like myself bad. So I don't know if you like anyone.
This is the sort of question that nobody likes answering, but when you guys first started playing, were there any particular shared influences that you both sort of had? And like any influences that you both sort of said, yes, we both sort of have common ground here, this is going to work? Because obviously playing in bands like Pseudo and Heavy Amber, there's a bit of shared ground there in terms of the sound. But were there any particular artists that you guys were sort of saying, yeah, I sort of want this Echo Social Club to sound a bit like this?
I think we share a lot of common ground.
I would say 99%.
Yeah.
Really. And then whatever the 1% is, typically it's just being slowly chipped away. Where it's like, oh, have you heard this? And have you heard that? It's every time I've gone, that's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know, was there any band really, like, I can't really think of any that we didn't really kind of come up with something that I really wanted to sound like. Just kind of just wanted to test the waters.
Yeah.
I suppose obviously the blueprint was, obviously, the two pieces, the White Stripes, Black Keys, even Raw Blood and all that kind of stuff, and Black Duo Jets. But I mean, beyond that, I don't know if we ever kind of picked a vein to go down. I think we just kind of just tried to just let it happen, I suppose.
And I guess I should ask as well, where did the name come from?
That's a really good question, actually. I don't know.
We had a list.
Yeah, that was like the ramblings of an absolute fucking mental case, though.
Yeah.
Like, it was just like, I've got it somewhere.
Yeah, Jake had this little notepad that just had like a list of things. He's like, what about this? What about this? What about this? Like, no. Say that one again.
Yeah. I don't know where it came from. I think it was just a really cool combination of words that I just kind of just liked. And I think you just kind of liked them and it just stuck. What was it? We came close to another one.
Yeah, it was Slime Machine.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Slime Machine.
Yeah.
Which ended up just being a song now.
Because, I mean, Echo Social Club, it feels like a very, I guess, fitting name. And I guess in a weird way, it sort of has this idea of you guys both being in sync, in that it's sort of like, echo, one is sort of copying the other, or you're both very sort of in tune. And I guess that ties back in with the idea of, like Jake, you mentioned him being on bass, locking in with the groove and everything. And I think I'm just rambling, trying to sort of make connections there now.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. It's definitely crafted in that way. Like it's always meant to be even when I came up with not that we have to harp on about it or anything like that, but the hum drums is, the hum being the guitar, the drum being the drum, and the Echo Social Club exactly was that. It was meant to kind of convey just kind of like the feedback of each other, for sure, and kind of a play on the fact that it's a social club, but it's two. It's one of those gags. I think I actually really like the entourage as well.
Yeah,
I remember really, really being hung on the entourage. That was a close one as well. Just being like, I thought that was really funny. Probably not as funny as I think. I think everyone's like, all right, bro.
Oh, well, I mean, those all those jokes sort of seem a bit, funnier at the time, but in hindsight, they're just a bit embarrassing. I mean, I was telling. Not that I'm saying it's an embarrassing name, but sort of what I mentioned before about, those early band names that you have, they're usually a bit more embarrassing. Like I was telling someone on an episode of this podcast recently, when I was about 16, I'd formed this band at school with a couple of guys, and we only got as far as the name before one person in the band found out others were laughing at the name, and he decided to quit. But I guess going back onto what talking about with you guys, like you obviously mentioned things like, like the White Stripes before. And obviously that is something that a lot of people I've noticed will make comparisons about. And obviously it's very easy to do so. You've got the male-female guitarist drummer duo. But I've also heard other, comparisons with the sort of music you guys make. Like Paul, who was the drummer in my band, when he saw you guys, I mean, Jake, he said, I think there's a bit of Prince in this guy with how sort of like, flashy your sort of guitar playing and your performance style was. But I mean, I feel those are easy comparisons to make, but I don't particularly want to make comparisons because there's nothing potentially derivative about what you guys do. It all feels very fresh and very
Thank you, man.
Good, I guess. But again, that's me just pumping the tires. So when I first saw you guys, it was early 2023. So from what you told me, it was your second show, playing at Shot Kickers, supporting fellow Pseudo Mindhive spinoff Neon Goblin. And I was just blown away by what you guys were doing. And I mean, obviously, early days, you're doing something that good already. I mean, it was the sort of thing where very rarely do I see a band and I say, I have to go and see them the next chance I get. Like, it was just incendiary. So I've seen you guys, 14, 15 times since. And the last of which was when you supported my band, which I'm very grateful for. But I guess this is a long-winded way of me saying, how do you guys describe the live show that you put on?
That's a good question, Tom. I don't know.
How do I say this? Things can go wrong very easily.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Absolutely.
That's one of my follow-up questions, actually.
Yeah. It's. I mean, yeah, that's the first thing that always comes to mind is that it can go off the rails pretty quickly, for sure. And I mean, like that's the beauty and I suppose the detriment of only the two of us. If one of us stops, it's game over. If it's not going to be loud, if it's not going to be soft or anything like that, it's completely game over. If a pedal blows up or a guitar string breaks or whatever, it's cymbals fall over. I mean, every single problem pretty much that could have happened has happened to us. That's for sure. Sorry, we might be digressing. What the question was, how do you describe the show?
How do you describe the live show that you guys put on? Like, is there particularly any goal that you guys have when you guys get up on stage? Like, are you basically saying we want to make sure we're having a good time? We want to make sure the audience are blown away? Or are you saying, let's just, let's spend the next half hour up here having a good time?
All of that, for sure.
Yeah, I think we start going like, let's just go for it. And then it definitely helps when the audience gets into it as well.
I guess on that topic of, things going wrong, I mean, that's actually one thing I find amazing is that I think almost every show I've seen, something has gone wrong. I think usually, Jake, with your pedal board or something.
Always something goes wrong.
But the thing is, I don't know if you went to school to study, musician recovery or something, but I don't think I've ever actually seen it, be detrimental to the performance. Like, it looks so natural, almost as if you're sort of able to make it part of the show. I mean, speaking as a fellow guitarist, and I mean, I'm not on the same level as yourself. But it's the sort of thing where anytime I see something go wrong, part of me has that, that car crash mentality where I'm like, how's he going to get out of this one? And every time you manage to keep it going, and I'm just sort of like, this is phenomenal to me. It's all so effortless, and I guess that's my way of saying even the fuck ups are entertaining and enjoyable.
Thank you.
So I embrace that, I guess.
Oh,
of course, Neve, I haven't seen you knock over any cymbals or anything yet, but give it time.
your kick pedal, it's just completely disintegrated, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been. Well, I mean, like that's. I mean, it's. I both appreciate that. I'm speaking on your behalf, but I mean, that's. I think one of the main things is that, I mean, like, it's the show has to go on. You've only got X amount of time. You've only got 45 minutes or sometimes half an hour or an hour, and I mean, you want to showcase as much as you can to as many people as you can, I suppose. And I think one of my mantras, I mean, actually, I just kind of figured out what I was going to say about describing the live show. I think one of the mantras that I've always had about this project is that even if somebody doesn't particularly like the songs or likes the vibe or even doesn't even like kind of like the playing, I suppose, as long as they think, fuck, that sounded massive for two people. Even if they didn't like a single one of the songs at all, as long as they can walk away going like, fuck, that sounded like four people. I think that's one thing that's a must for me. You know what I mean? If it doesn't sound like that, then something's gone completely wrong.
Yeah.
It's about, I think it's kind of like defying those kind of expectations of like seeing two people and kind of, I suppose for the most part, it's, usually 4 to 5 pieces, I would say, in the local scene in particular. Sprinkled in with a couple 3 pieces and 2 pieces as well, really good 2 pieces too. I think that's kind of one of those main things for sure, where it's kind of like, I want people to go away and kind of go, I can't believe how fucking big that was. That's a must.
Because I think something that I find amazing is the fact that you guys aren't bigger, I mean, I know about gradual growth and everything, but it still sort of shocks me because I remember seeing you guys play every Sunday at the Tote in Collingwood last year as part of the residency. And every week those shows got slightly bigger. So word of mouth obviously spreads. But I think, at least from my opinion, there is also the fact that you guys look so unassuming that it's sort of hard to convince people to come and see you guys at times, I guess. Like, for example, when you supported my band in late May, I remember the room being almost empty when you guys took the stage. But by the end of it, so many people were there. And I think they all look like they just witnessed something incredibly special. And I had people coming up to me afterwards and just sort of being like, I mean, they weren't necessarily saying why weren't they headlining, but that was the general, impression that I was getting, which is great for when it was our headline show. But pretty much all of them were just sort of like amazed. So when you guys actually sort of, I guess, take the stage and anything, like, I should say, do you guys find it hard to draw an audience at times? And do you sort of do anything special to sort of convert those in attendance into fans? Or do you just sort of business as usual, let the music speak for itself?
I mean, we worry about how many people are always going to come. I mean, we freak out every time, for sure. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we freak out. We don't really do much about it, though.
Yeah. I don't know. I've never really thought of that, actually. We probably actually should give it some thought, to be honest, about how you kind of wrangle people and make sure they always come back. I mean, it's always nice to see familiar faces and bring new faces and stuff, but I don't know. I really don't know. It's a really good question. And I don't have a really good answer. I'm sorry.
I mean, yeah, we try to be active on social media.
And I mean, we gig a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, we've taken a bit of but I mean, I don't know how many shows we played since we started. Like, but I remember I think we played like something 34 gigs or something like that in like 6 months or something like that. It was pretty bonkers. So I think that was kind of like just a complete foot down, like absolutely just pedal to the metal type situation where it's, if the amount of times there's only so many times that you can see a name on a poster, and so you're going to go, well, I have to kind of see this band eventually. I know I'm like that, so it's, but I don't know how sound that is anymore. Maybe people aren't like that anymore, or have been like that at all. To be fair, but yeah, I'm not too sure. I'll come back to you on that one.
Because, I mean, that's the sort of thing that, I mean, at least from my own personal, I guess, approach to things, I'm always that sort of person who is like, hey, if there's a band I like, I'm going to champion them as much as possible, which is why anytime someone says to me, who's a band I should check out? I'm like, well, I've got one name, 3 words, 2 people, here it is for you, like I'm the sort of person who I find that there are so many artists out there who deserve, an audience, who deserve good things, and they don't get the audience that they deserve. And I always look from the point of view of, if I can help change that, I will. But I'm not some, a charitable genius or anything like that. I'm just a guy with a podcast and a keyboard at times. But I guess what I should also touch on as well is, it's a bit of an odd segue. We touched on the White Stripes before. We touched on Jack White before, Jake. We've spoken at length about Jack White. And I've also mentioned to you that I think my favorite album this year is probably his new one. But when it comes to EPs, I think my favorite one this year is the one that you guys are, I say, about to put out, but this podcast is coming out on the day it comes out. So the EP's out today. Well done.
Available on all your favorite music retailers.
Exactly. It's been out all morning and I've listened to it. So, or actually, to be perfectly fair, we're talking a week in advance. I listened to it yesterday. I listened to it 4 times in a row because it's bloody excellent. Like I honestly feel like I'm just like praising you guys too much, but I really love the stuff that you guys do. But it's an amazing EP, and I can only imagine after so long of working on it, playing live, it must be one you guys are very proud of and very keen to have out in the world.
Yeah, I love all the songs, but yeah, like it seems almost old now. Like
nostalgic is the word you use, actually.
Yeah, like we've just been writing so much since those songs. I kind of just want to get them out so we can keep going.
No, I agree. I completely agree. It's when you said that the last week, and you're like, oh, these songs almost feel nostalgic. Like that's exactly what it feels like, and they haven't even been released yet. All 2 of them have singles. And when I'm echoing exactly what you just said. But when you've got like an album pretty much in the can, ready to go, and it's interesting. It's to kind of to put this out and then kind of go like, let's go for the next one. I know that we're kind of just keen for that after we tour and all that kind of stuff. So, but absolutely proud of those songs. They're the first songs that we ever wrote together.
Yeah,
pretty much. Excellently produced by Michael Badger, who's an absolute just genius, and mastered by David Briggs, who's also a genius as well. So we had a really, really good, really good kind of team of people behind us, like really, really making it come to life. Badger was just, our third Beatle, is what you said. Yeah. Third Beatle's really funny. Yeah.
I honestly feel like you're reading my questions because I was about to mention Michael Badger actually, but you've done it for me. But because I guess all of those songs were like, when were they sort of written? Like, because they all seem like, I've obviously heard all of them already just from seeing you guys live, but how far back do they stretch? Because I know at least some of them, if not all of them, would have been performed at those early shows.
They were all pretty much finished, bar a few changes here and there, in January last year. So they've been ready to go for like a minute in terms of actually releasing them. But we started writing them late 2022, like when we first starting to get together. So they literally are the first one.
Sly was the first one.
Sly was the first one. Yeah. And then Ego, and E-Cowboy. Like, it's I even remember kind of the order that they all came down to too. Yeah. And even funnily enough, when we've started, like, obviously won't name the song, but we literally got the masters back and we were listening to it. And then I was in the car and I was listening to it just to kind of not A-B, but just to kind of double check everything, even though I knew it was going to sound great. And as I was listening to it, I kind of went, fuck, I've just come up with a better part for this. It always happens. It's you're never going to be 100% about it. And then it's kind of, we started workshopping and it felt like we completely breathed new life into this song again. It's written this whole new chorus for it. And it's like, now it comes up to the question where it's like, do we have to re-record this and put this on the album? Because now it's a better song. So it's, it's always your kind of baby and it's hard to let go of sometimes, but it's good to kind of get them out there and give them that time, give them that life. Yeah.
Obviously, we were mentioning before that all of these songs have been, effectively written for quite some time. But what is the creative process like for you guys? Because, I think, Jake, you were saying a lot of these songs were sort of ones that you had sort of written a lot of previously, unless I'm misremembering.
They pretty much just all got scrapped. All those riffs that I showed Neve ended up just either completely, well, not canned, but they're still just in limbo. We wrote these songs from scratch together.
So I guess that actually goes into the next question I had, which is, for you guys, how does a song go from being an idea into being a tune for the live show and then recorded for the EP?
Sorry, I'm just thinking about the other day.
Yeah.
When the other day when we were at rehearsal and we were about to pack up, and then I told Jake to whip a riff out of his arse. And you did, and now we've got a new song.
Yeah, it can happen like that. It can happen like that. I wish, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I think like you will come with some ideas and then we'll just jam on it, see what we can do. And then, yeah, I don't know.
There's no real formula for it. I wish there was some sort, like I wish there was something that was formulaic about it, but you can, like, there's been times where we've sweated over a song for like 4 weeks and then just completely just canned the thing. After we completely finished it, we just looked at it and went, this is not even us. It's a great song, but it's not even us, and we just canned it completely. And then there's been times where we've sat down and tried to figure out a part for, hours and hours and hours, and then it just doesn't kind of happen, or you try and force it, and then, it completely, you start to try and you start to overthink things, and you try and make it too flashy, or it needs another riff, and it's kind of like, well, I mean, if you have to kind of try and think, not that there's anything wrong with being like that or anything like that, and like thinking laterally about where it's like, or being kind of very, what's the word, kind of calculated in thinking, it needs this now, because you do need a bit of that. That's something that I know that I've tried to work on personally as a songwriter recently, for sure, about, this needs a bridge, or this should be a counter melody or something like that, And then, then there's times where a song can be, I mean, we wrote a song, the last song on the album that we're going to record. We wrote it in 10 minutes a couple of weeks ago. It just happened, just 10 minutes, done. And we just kind of looked at each other, and granted the lyrics weren't done, but, the melodies were there. We looked at each other and just went, this is perfect. It doesn't really need anything. It's creative process is really, it's non-linear, but it's very kind of, I suppose it's very organic between the two of us, and there's times where it's kind of like Neve typically just kind of goes, no, that doesn't need that, or that, you don't need that, or that's that shit. It's kind of done. Okay, done. Easy. So I just kind of pipe down. And I slow my roll a little bit. Yeah.
I mean, writing, songs in 10 minutes. So what I'm hearing is that you guys are overachievers, basically, and you're making the rest of us look bad. Thanks. Appreciate that. So something I also find fascinating about this EP is that, when I see you guys live, the songs are ferocious. There's energy, there's swagger, usually from yourself, Jake. And it's just very immense. So the EP doesn't have that physical aspect, but it's just as strong. So what was the recording of it like? Was there a concerted effort to try and achieve that same energy that you bring the live stage, or did you want it to be a bit more precise and feature less equipment failure?
Yeah, definitely that.
I think it was hard to make it sound like how we play live. I don't know.
It's a mix of both, I would say.
Yeah.
Not to speak on your behalf, but it's definitely a mix of both.
Yeah, like with Come Close at the start when we started recording that one, I struggled to, like, I would like listen to it and I think it sounds a lot. I don't know.
Yeah, it's when it came to recording those songs in particular, it's we tried a lot of different methods, like a lot of different methods of recording the drums, a lot of different methods of recording the guitar, whether it was recorded the way that the way that I kind of have my live set up. We did a take like that. We did a take completely different. We ended up with an amalgamation of both. And essentially it was a case by case basis of on a song basis, pretty much. And it was it's definitely because of Badge, Michael Badger. He knew exactly, he got the essence of the song, and I think he knew what he kind of wanted to achieve, and what we wanted to achieve, and then what he wanted to achieve, like to basically get it there. So it's definitely a kind of a hybrid of both. And essentially, I mean, it's not to say that it was, a crash test or anything like that, but I mean, an EP is kind of like that, But by the end of the recording, we were really, really comfortable in the room. We were really, really comfortable with kind of running through with it the way that we kind of wanted to do, and it's testing ground. You know what I mean? So it's by the end of it, we were kind of just raring to go. So I suppose the album will kind of be a bit more refined and polished in the approach, because we kind of know the way that we kind of want to take off and land, so to speak. Yeah.
That's a nice little metaphor, honestly.
Pretty good.
But I guess if you don't say so yourself. But in a more immediate sort of fashion, I guess you guys will be jumping in the Echo Mobile soon and hitting the road. So how does that? Yes, Neve, I saw your recent Instagram post of using your phraseology there. So how was that feeling? Because this is like the first time you guys are actually leaving Victoria for a show, isn't it? Are you heading to Adelaide, Sydney as well? I think.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So this is the first time I've been on a tour, really. I know you've done it before, but yeah, this is my first time.
I'm very excited.
Yeah.
So how do you think the the Echo Social Club sound is going to go down at the Crown and Anchor in Adelaide? Do you think it's going to be bottled off stage, or do you think they're going to actually say, finally, some music?
I'll tell you what. I mean, it's look, I've only ever dealt with very, very nice Adelaideans. They've always been very welcome. Adelaides and Adelasses and Adelaide, everyone in between.
I have no clue how, despite living in Adelaide for 23 years, that never came my way, calling people Adelaides or Adelasses.
Yeah. Adelasses? Where did you pull that from? It's pretty good. Oh, okay. We'll discuss that. The Crank is unreal. So good. It's one of the best venues that have been in Australia, period. It's just so good. So I'm raring to get up there and raring to show you. It's so good. We've got some really, really good supports up there as well. And across the board, really, I think I'm really excited about Adelaide, for sure. Yeah.
But of course, I should say, since we're actually recording this podcast a week ahead of the EP release and launch, I should maintain that illusion of immediacy and say, well, I can't wait to see you guys at your show tonight. It's going to be an absolute belter, I'm sure. It's very hard to actually keep that illusion going, isn't it?
Yeah, we've completely pushed that illusion about 5 times now.
It's completely fine. I guess in the interest of time, I should get down to the portion of this podcast in which its namesake is derived. So for those who haven't heard it, and I don't know if either of you have actually heard it yet, this trusty chords, I follow the 1, 3, and 5 structure of a standard chord. And I like to ask people about the one artist that's impacted them, 3 albums, and also 5 songs they can turn to. These albums and songs don't need to be by your one artist, but I would like to sort of get you thinking and say, I'll start with you, Jake. Who is one artist that has inspired you the most, whether it be personally or creatively?
I mean, obviously Jack White's one of those ones that will be forever, just solidified as, I think, my number one. But I mean, beyond the kind of the obvious and beyond maybe even what we've discussed previously, I would say, I mean, Alex Turner or any of the offshoots of the Arctic Monkeys, including Last Shadow Puppets, I'd probably pick him at a really solid second, I would say.
And Neve, what about yourself?
Probably Queens of the Stone Age. I'm a massive Queens fan.
They're all very, very good choices. And I mean, it's the sort of thing where when you actually say them, it's where I start sort of thinking of the band through that lens. And I'm like, I can see a little bit of a Arctic Monkeys swagger at times. I can see a bit of the Queens of Stone Age ferocity at times as well. That's why I like asking these questions. Everything starts to make sense with a little bit of context where the influences come from. But my next question for you guys is, what are 3 albums that have impacted you the most? And I'll say 3 each, not 3 between years. This could be albums that you're always throwing on, or something that's been integral to your musical evolution.
Should we go first?
No, I need to think about
this. It's always me having to go first, huh? Push me down the cliff. First one that comes to mind, Appetite for Destruction by Guns N' Roses. I mean, just a pure, just unadulterated rock and roll, just disgusting, just dirty. Just it sounds exactly how it sounds. They look exactly how they should look. Just arguably, just one of the most perfect bands in the world, in my opinion. I would say go into a bit more of a contemporary kind of point, maybe. Well, Life in Cartoon Motion, funnily enough, by Mika is definitely one of those ones that I just absolutely adore. I think it's just a perfect pop record. And I think he's a perfect pop artist, actually, in a lot of ways. So I'll put that at number 2 because I think that's my first record that I ever bought, actually, with my own money. And number three, I would probably put Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino by the Arctic Monkeys. Again, just an amazing record through and through, and it's borderline genreless. It just completely just like transcends all genre. It's a concept album. It's a very deeply personal album. It's very cinematic. It's very emotional. It's very heavy. It's just everything. It's just, I think it's just a perfect record.
See, I do have to say, seeing Echo Social Club live, at no point do I ever think, I bet that guy up at the front of the guitar has got a Mika album on the show. And I mean, that's nothing against Mika. I mean, you guys can see through the video, I've got lots of CDs behind me right here. And there's some pretty embarrassing ones there. I've got, one of my first singles that I didn't buy. It was given to me, Westlife's Swear It Again.
Yeah, nice.
I don't exactly pull that one out that often, but it's a sort of thing where it's sort of amazing where those influences come from. But at the same time, it's a sort of thing where you start sort of finding a little bit of, I guess, again, context and sort of sense when you start thinking, well, you guys also write some pretty good songs. I start sort of seeing where some of the songwriting sort of chops can come from. You listen to a lot of pop music, they know how to write some songs. So it starts making a little bit of sense. Not that I'm saying that Echo Social Club are going to be, doing a bit of Grace Kelly at the next show. But
I could only hope. I've been trying to convince Neve for 2 years. That's not true. It's not a fucking shit. That's karaoke. That's when we go out for karaoke time.
But Neve, what about yourself? 3 albums from yourself.
3 albums.
I know one.
What?
I'm not going to say it.
I'll say it.
Grace.
Yeah, I was going to say Grace.
Well, that's why I didn't want to say it.
Yeah, Grace.
As in, are we talking Jeff Buckley's Grace?
Yeah, Jeff Buckley.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I don't know many other albums called Grace, but I wanted to confirm it wasn't like, by someone down from, Mornington had an album called Grace or something.
Going through my records in my head, I would always put on Physical Graffiti, Led Zeppelin, and Heads Up, War Paint.
Right. And that's actually something, I mean, I hate to sort of harp on the idea of like context and everything, but I mean, as someone who is a drummer as well, I mean, Led Zeppelin, Physical Graffiti, pretty good drums in there. War Paint, you've got Stella on drums and everything. There's some bloody good drummers in there as well. I've instantly forgotten that, it was Grace was the first one. That one isn't exactly much of a drumming record, but there's some amazing songs on that one as well. I mean, Jeff was just he was a force to be reckoned with until he sadly wasn't.
He's the absolute best.
And then I guess as a last question, I'd love to know 5 songs that you guys can always turn to. These can be, ones you turn to for comfort, for excitement, for anything at all. Your 5 trusty songs.
Oh my God, Percy.
Oh, Michael, I'm blanking.
Okay. Oh Children by Nick Cave. Because I mean, like if you asked me next week, I would have completely different answers probably. I mean, like maybe bar a few. I mean, these questions, but I mean, like. All these artists that I haven't even mentioned, like Nick Cave, I think is just one of the best artists out of Australia, but I would say in the world that's ever existed, period, through and through. Cold Desert by Kings of Leon, I think another fantastic band and severely underrated in a lot of ways as well. I think they've copped a lot of flack for unjustly, I would say, for their later stuff. And I understand they're completely different bands now, but man, they've written some fucking amazing songs and amazing records.
Those early albums are amazing. And
then some of the later stuff's unbelievable too. But I mean, Only by the Nights, just a perfect arena rock record, like just straight start to finish. It's just all hits, no filler, just unreal. Cold Desert's one of those ones that just completely changed my life.
Well, I mean, there was also a band I always turn to, I always look at when someone sort of says like, oh, can you sort of give me an example of a band who are totally different from their big single?
Yeah.
And I always say, you want something so removed from Sex on Fire? Listen to Charmer by Kings of Leon. Like that scream. You just sort of like, how did they end up on the radio?
Yeah, right, I know. And like even when they were kind of like, in that early youth and young manhood era, like with those kind of like I don't know what you would even call it. They've got bangs, but it's like they look like mushroom cuts, you know what I mean? Like handlebar mustaches and shit, and like the massive beards. Like it's just crazy to think about when they went from there to like how they are now. And I mean, even a lot of their stuff now, I think is great too. So that's 2. It's a really hard question. I don't know. Chime in for me.
For you.
Yeah, while I think you can start.
Oh,
yeah,
me.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Don't ever speak on behalf of me ever.
Okay. Well, okay. Betty and the Jets.
Nice.
Yeah. I was listening to Satellite by the Kills on the way here.
That's a two-piece we forgot to mention. Kills.
Yeah.
For sure.
Actually, funnily enough, in a weird way. So I've interviewed both members of the Kills before, and I actually recently said this to someone only a few weeks ago on a podcast. But they are so different from each other in terms of like talking to them. Like I remember I chatted to Alison Mosshart, and she was just amazing, bubbly, and everything. Then I chatted to Jamie. God, blood from a stone. He was not a talker. I went through all like 20 of my questions in 2 minutes because he was basically just like, yep, nope, and then I'm struggling for the rest of it. And like he makes some amazing music, but sadly, I mean, he's probably quite talkative amongst friends and everything, but I was struggling, that's for sure.
Oh, damn.
Look, I'm not much of a talker.
No.
I mean, look, for a brief second, I was thinking about making some comparisons there and saying, you guys like the anti-kills, like, you know, Neve's not much of a talker, but then I'm just like, I don't want to bring that into it and sort of, you know, start saying talk more, Neve, or something like that.
What are you up to? You on two?
I've done two.
Okay. I'm sorry, I got to pull up. I'm getting complacent. I would say Like a Rolling Stone by Bob Dylan. What's an era that I haven't touched on yet? I mean, now that you've mentioned Grace, I just keep thinking about Jeff Buckley. Yeah, I'd probably put So Real on there. And I got it, dude. Ode to the Mets by the Strokes. Undoubtedly, again, I think one of the best songs I've ever heard in my life. I think that's just a perfect song, and I would argue their best record too.
That was the most recent record, wasn't it? I'm forgetting the name of it right now, but I got the album artwork in my head. I can edit this in later. I won't, but I can.
Oh, the New Abnormal. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
The New Abnormal. Of course, I don't need to edit it in now. Beautiful. But yeah, that's actually sort of funny because, like Jake, you mentioned before, you know, is the most recent Arctic Monkeys album and the most recent Strokes album. A lot of purists would probably say those aren't their best albums, but they're great for different reasons as well. And I don't know whether or not you have different reasons for liking them as opposed to the people who loved them at the start or something. But and I think it's a great example of how these bands can grow and really sort of show different styles over the years.
I love bands like that. I love bands that have different. You can see different. You see photos of them, and you know exactly what album they were touring or what era that was. You know what I mean? It's not because you have to be a hyper fixated fan. You just kind of just know based on kind of just the general vibe. I think that kind of like Bowie-esque. I know Bowie's obviously completely different. We haven't even spoken about David Bowie either. It's like, you know, he's a completely different kind of category. It was a different category of artist where he completely just, you know, changed and morphed into different characters and all that kind of stuff. But I do love when bands have a certain aesthetic for a certain album or have a certain kind of feel for a certain record. It's one of my favorite things in the world. Like I could easily leave anything pre-Humbug Arctic Monkeys behind. Like with that, like I wouldn't really care for it besides maybe one song, and I'd be completely fine with that. And whereas with Kings of Leon, I could happily do the opposite, and I'd still be fine with that as well. From like, you know, and vice versa. What was the other band we were talking about?
You mentioned David Bowie. You hadn't touched on him.
The Strokes.
Oh, the Strokes. Yeah, sorry.
The Strokes are another one where it's kind of like, you know, even like I could happily have that record, and I'd be completely fine with not having the rest of their music. Personally, like I love, like, and that's I know that sounds sacrilegious because the first album's amazing, but I probably would eat those words, but I think that record's amazing, you know, and I love when things change.
And so I think that's 5 songs from yourself, Jake.
Yeah.
And I think we've got 2 from you, Neve. So
yeah. Okay.
Pull your socks up.
Come on, man.
Well, I'll say I Appear Missing, Queens of the Stone Age.
Banger.
Sure Know Something, Kiss. It's like, it's the thing in my family.
Yeah, it's a bad song too.
So what's that? That's 4.
That's 4.
Oh, last one. Maggie May.
Oh, that's so good. I'm so annoyed. That's so good.
I was walking down the street with my dad the other day and I was just singing like the one bit.
That's so good.
He's like, why are you doing it? Stop.
Oh, it's so good. We listened to that the other night, weren't we? Where were we driving to? That's such a good song. I love that song.
I should say, I'm assuming you guys talk about the Rod Stewart, Maggie May.
Yeah.
Cool. I just had to check for a second because it was actually odd sort of listening to you sort of make those choices, because my mother was a huge fan of, like, Rod Stewart was her favorite artist. She was a huge fan of Kiss. She got me onto Kiss. And hearing these choices, I'm just sort of like having a weird walk down memory lane, and I'm just sort of like, this is brilliant choices. I'm really getting that like early childhood, like listening to Triple M and Adelaide vibe.
Yeah, for sure.
Not to use that as a pejorative term. It's well, I guess if you don't mind, I'd like to thank you for your time as I wrap things up today by paraphrasing a great band who you might have heard of, as I say to the humble listener, that's Neve, that's Jake, and they're lovely. I'll see you guys at the bar at your next show.
Thank you, Lyle. You're the best, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Trusty Chords. If you listened to this episode and enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate it if you were able to take a few minutes to like, follow, share, and review this podcast on your preferred platform of choice. As always, no obligation, but I'm forever grateful if you do. If you're eager to follow on social media, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Trusty Chords Podcast, all one word. There's also a blog for this podcast on my own website, which is tylerjenke.com. That's TYLERJENKE/Trusty Chords Podcast, all one word. That's where you'll find entries on each episode each week and a list of all the artists, albums, and 5 songs chosen by guests each week, along with the accompanying playlist too. You can also find a link to the Buy Me a Coffee platform, where you can throw me a few dollars to keep this podcast running if you feel so inclined. As usual, thanks to everyone who continues to listen, message, or just support this podcast in any way. I'm forever grateful to hear from you all each and every week. Lastly, I need to thank Jake and Neve for spending time with me this week for their podcast. I promise I'll have them on another episode one day so you can hear their voices with a bit more clarity. But once again, thank you kindly for listening, and I hope to see you all again next week as I continue to celebrate music and those that create it.